Welcome back to the Daily Iowan Football Forum. I'm Brendan Stiles, and joining me today from Daily Iowan is John Linder, and from Daily Iowan TV we have Tom Rogers and Zach Schulte. In this edition, we will be discussing the Iowa defensive line, and right now the big story is with Christian Ballard moving inside a D tackle from DN, making way for Broderick Binns to be in the with the first string. What are your guys' thoughts on that right now?
Broderick Binns, I think he showed last year that he is a guy that can come in and he can contribute for this Iowa football team on the end. Um, Having that confidence, I think it speaks volumes not only for Binns but also for Ballard that he can move. He can make that, and it's not necessarily an easy transition. I know it's defensive line. You're still going up against the same types of players, offensive linemen, but it is a huge difference when you've got a center and a guard. They're going to combo on you. There's different techniques and things you have to little small subtle things that come into play there, and I think that speaks volumes for his development as a player and the faith that the Iowa coaching staff, Rick Kaczynski and Kirk Ferentz have in him.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'm interested in is now that they lose King and Kroll, who's going to take on the leadership role on the D line? I mean, obviously Claiborne and Ballard are great players, and they had a lot of playing experience last year. But there's no question that King and Kroll were the heart of that unit, and not just defensive line, but the defense as a whole.
Yeah.
Is it going to be one of those guys coming on to take on the leadership role? Or is it going to be somebody new? I mean, we all know they can play, but just like how are they going to affect the unit as a whole?
Obviously Claiborne has the experience in the past, and I feel like what the defensive line needs right now is someone to just step up and kind of take the first steps and act as a leader just by the way that they play in the games. And I think like everything else will fall into place after that. So
John, you were talking about Broderick Binns and just the speaking volumes of him. He's a guy that Kirk Ferentz has talked a lot about from April back in spring ball. He mentioned his name as a guy that's been improving to even now as a guy that they're really excited to have out there on the field. Just from your perspective, what do you feel he's going to bring now that he's going to be a defensive end that's going to be getting more of that playing time?
Well, just last year, I mean, I remember there was a play in the game against Pittsburgh, and this was just one example of many. But I mean, when he came on the field, you knew where he was. He was always around the ball, and you were always asking yourself, why isn't this guy getting more playing time? But I mean, as it was, the D line had a lot of talent last year, but now he's getting this opportunity to step in, and I think his combination of size and speed coming off the edge is going to be a big help to that team.
And I just feel like, too, you touched on the Pittsburgh game. The other game that really stands out is Purdue. He had a fumble he recovered in that game, and it just seemed like as the season progressed, he got better and better. Tom, you were touching on Matt Kroll and Mitch King there and just the impact that those guys had on the defensive line. Do you see Claiborne and Ballard being those guys that step into those leadership roles at this point?
Well, I mean, certainly from an experience standpoint, they would be the guys that you think might. But, I mean, being a great player and being a leader are two totally different things. I mean, yeah, we know that they can rush the passer and stop the run, but can they affect everyone else and just the way they play?
I'm not sure that anyone on this defensive line necessarily has to step up and be a leader. They've got AJ Eads and they have Pat Anger, and those guys. I think it's pretty clear the coaching staff is relying on them more heavily than I think anyone else on the defense, at least in the defense, if not the entire team, to step up and be a leader.
And then,
when you talk about people's defenses, the base of your defense is usually your defensive line, and if you can stop the run, I feel like that's a major part of the defense as far as when people look at your total defense and how much yards you're going to give up during the season and how many yards or how many touchdowns you're going to give up during the season. People look at the defense as an anchor to kind of, I guess, show where the defense is as a whole for the team. So I think it's a major part.
And another guy that they're highly touting right now is Carl Klug. In the beginning of the season, he had that game against Florida International. Yeah, he didn't start, obviously, because of Mitch King and Matt Kroll, but he had 9 tackles, was named Big Ten Player of the Week. That's pretty impressive for somebody that was listed as second string.
Yeah, I think Klug, he's a guy that I would be very surprised if he doesn't take over that other starting spot if Ballard does indeed stay inside, which it looks like he's going to. That being said, there's a lot of talent at that defensive tackle spot, and there's a lot of young talent. I mean, there's Cody Hundertmark. He played a substantial amount in his true freshman year. There's Steve Begay. He's also he looks to be a guy that's going to get some playing time as well as Mike Daniels, who he's also, I think he's probably that number 2 guy, possibly he and Klug, that might get that other spot on that at that D tackle spot.
And then just the last question here. You look at Iowa's defensive line. Maybe they don't necessarily have guys that you look at and say that's the best defensive end of the Big Ten or that's the best defensive tackle, but it looks like as a unit it looks pretty strong and for sure is at the top of the conference. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that's more important. I mean, you can have a bunch of great players when you have a group of guys that work well as a unit, especially down in the line. I mean, that's going to make the biggest difference.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Daily Iowan Football Forum. Be sure to check us out on dailyiowan.com every day. Make sure to watch Tom, Zach, and the rest of the DITV gang every Sunday through Thursday night at 9:30 and 10:30 on UIowa TV, which is Channel 17 in the city, Channel 4 in the dorms. Make sure to read articles written by John Linder and yours truly in the Daily Iowan every day. And be on the lookout for our first pregame on Friday, September 4th. For Zach Schulte, Tom Rogers, and John Linder, I'm Brendan Stiles signing off.